Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this month's Charged Chat. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host for tonight, Peter Westcott. Have to admit, I'm a little bit like the cripple at the medicine show. I'm the denominated dumb guy for tonight. So please excuse any obvious questions. We're joined tonight by Russ Shepherd from Evolution Australia to talk about an exciting project. Conrad Gibb and Tim Harrison from Charged Garage, who is an experienced EV converter, and he owns that lovely Cortina, and he's working on a really exciting new project as we speak. So welcome all, and Emma, next slide please. Just bear in mind that everyone has been muted to keep the background noise to a minimum and keep the bandwidth demands to a minimum. Just use the chat button to say hello to other attendees, and maybe even if you could share where in the world you are watching and listening from, would be handy. We are a global community, and it's always nice to welcome people from offshore. Use the Q&A for questions, please. Hello to Melbourne North from Jeff, and kia ora to New Zealand. Please note this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the EV Alliance YouTube channel tomorrow. A link for the recording and information about how to connect with the EV Alliance will be listed at the end. So let's get straight into it. A couple of frequently asked questions. Konnichiwa, Japan. Is that often you'll see on motor specification sheets, there is a maximum continuous RPM rating, but it doesn't actually say what is continuous. Is continuous an hour, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, all day? So I'd be interested if anyone on the panel could help disabuse me of that ignorance. In conjunction with that, if I look at these charts that are supposed to tell me something, I can't actually read them. If I look at the area graph on the left, it tells me that perhaps the most efficient RPM for the motor is 2000 RPM. But if I use my ICE knowledge and I look at the line graph on the right, it tells me that the sweet spot for power and torque is about 5000 RPM. So I'm confused, I'm dismayed, and I'm eager to learn. So I'm just wondering if there's someone on the panel who can help me interpret these charts.
Conrad, do you want to pick this up?
Oh, I was waiting for you, Russ, but either or. I can more explain it from a Tesla point of view than a hyper.
Yeah, sure. You do the Tesla, I'll do the Hyper and HPEVS stuff, yeah?
Oh, you can do the HPEV stuff too.
Yep, no
basically, yeah, basically with full AC motors, they start in torque mode and end up in speed mode at some point in their RPM curve. So, and every one of these motors has what Pete said, the sweet spot.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I can probably shed a bit from my perspective. How we work is it's not so much. It's not like you're going to connect these to a CVT gearbox, but they're going to be the same RPM the whole time. What's more important is that the motor has a relatively easy life in terms of turning the wheels, and that comes down to the ratio. So it may be efficient at 2000 RPM, but it's not like you're going to be at 2000 RPM the whole time, and you're going to work your way through the gearbox. So it's almost like I'm not sure who asked the question, but it's, in my humble opinion, it's not the question to be asked almost. The question is, the better question is, what ratio gearbox should I be using to suit my vehicle, such that the vehicle isn't stalling obviously at low speed, and also, or should be more accurate, the motor isn't stalling, and also I'm not running out of revs essentially. So that's probably more important than trying to focus on what the sweet spot or most efficient is RPM, because you're not going to be at 2000 RPM the whole time. If you're going to be in say a Land Rover or a Range Rover, whatever, you're going to be in second or third gear potentially, or if you're in a reduction gearbox, you're going to be in one gear, but you're not going to be at 2000 RPM the whole time. So it's almost, I'm afraid, almost irrelevant, I guess, from that perspective. Does that make sense, guys?
It's the irrelevant in the room.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, excellent. It's the irrelevant. I'm going to use that actually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bumchish.
And the maximum continuous RPM, what does that mean? Is that something that matters if you're looking for cruising speed, or?
It's just like any motor. So they get hot after that windings, or the motor gets hot, or the controller gets hot. Something eventually gets hot. So they normally have a safe RPM rating.
Yeah. But a lot of these ratings are fairly conservative from the motor's perspective. So if it's say 5,000 PM or 7,000 RPM, then they'll have been tested to that level for a long time. So it'll be cruising speed or whatever it's going to be to at that level. But again, you would hope that you wouldn't be at that level the whole time, because the faster it's spinning, then the more power you're using. So we know from experience that a vehicle running obviously at high speed and high RPM consumes a lot of power. So it's probably not where you want the motor to be running anyway. Again, it comes down to the ratio. It comes down to the ratio that's more important than the RPM, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why we always recommend to have a gearbox to find that nice point where you're not revving the ring out of it, not using too much power. And the Teslas like to sit at 85 to 90. That's their peak optimum economy range.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Hopefully that answers some questions. Oh, it answers the question, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it sort of helps me make some sense from that. And just speaking to that, there's a question from Glenn about at what RPM typically will an AC motor under 100% load stall?
At its torque rating. So if you go over its torque capacity, it'll stall out, but normally pop the fuse or pop something before that happens.
Yeah. So we've seen it a few times with our vehicles. If we select the wrong gear or what have you, and you're on an incline, or it's just the wrong ratio completely, the motors will stall at that torque level. If it's unable to take, it's not RPM related. It's actually about the torque, torque more than anything else.
And so what this really illustrates is the importance of having a good relationship with your motor supplier, so you can have those discussions.
Yeah, absolutely, or whoever the designer is, really.
Yeah.
The motor supplier will offer a certain amount of advice, but it's along with setup of the BMS and selecting the BMS and the charger and all those other components that work together. Everything's got to be designed properly. There's got to be a high level design and careful component selection to make everything work together.
So
absolutely.
At the end of this presentation, we'll be seeing a list of the people involved in EV Alliance, and I would strongly recommend that anyone listening engage with and build a relationship with those people. Fantastic. Thanks very much. Emma, if we could just move on to, this is one of the big questions that came out of last month's chat. Will conversions get cheaper? And I think, Tim, you started to address this, and this was one of the things I think that tickles your
Who's the ball
box. So perhaps if you would like to lead off with a few thoughts.
Yeah, well, I just think it was a question that came up last week or last month, and we didn't have time to address it. But it is an interesting one because the trend with new EVs is definitely trending downwards, and the projections are that it'll be EVs will get cheaper, new production EVs, and they'll meet or get cheaper than their petrol or ICE equivalents. But that's in the world of mega manufacturing. We're dealing with, conversions on a niche market level, and I'm seeing some of the components actually increasing in price over the last couple of years. So where is this headed? I was just wondering what others are seeing and what their observations or forecasts are.
Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting comment. So I think there's the rich rebuilds effect, I think, with some of this. We know there's more components being becoming available, but then the demand's getting higher as well. So especially in Australia at the moment. Yeah, I think it's gonna. I think the prices, certainly the components, are going to be fairly. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't deal in stocks and shares, but I think bullish. I think it's the right word. They're going to be pretty strong for a while to come. Just simply because we still need the vehicles to be available for those that want to go down the upcycle or recycle route. So from that perspective, I think it's still going to be the prices are still going to be strong until the supply obviously maybe eases that somewhat. Certainly what we've seen is some of the prices of the motors and controllers have started to come down a little bit, but not to the degree that it's going to be incredibly cheap, or cost, more cost effective than what it is currently. What do you think, Conrad? Have you got an opinion on any of this?
The new motors aren't going to come down. The upcycling of wrecked EV motors and hacking and so forth is definitely coming down. And
I disagree actually, because it's getting harder for us to certainly source them, because there's obviously other there's other shops and other obviously private individuals trying to source these and paying, in my opinion, over the odds for wrecked Teslas and all this kind of stuff. So like I think that's a real issue. Like I said, it's a supply and demand, and at the moment the demand's pretty high for a relatively short small number of vehicles that are available. And as soon as you go overseas, you're obviously susceptible to currency fluctuations and costs of shipping and all this kind of stuff, which I think our customers certainly don't quite understand at the moment. So when we source from overseas, it costs an absolute fortune, to be honest with you, to get things in, and it takes a hell of a long time as well. So we've always got stuff on the water, obviously not in the air because it's too expensive, but it's taking anything from 6 to 12 weeks to get stuff in from overseas at the moment, and the prices are still pretty strong for that stuff as well.
Yeah, I agree. The shipping is abysmal at the moment, but the kilowatt hour price, back in 2012 when we did our first conversion, it was like $480 or $490 a kilowatt, and now it's probably getting close to half that. But the other thing we've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed it either, but anything out of China at the moment, like chargers and DC to DC component-wise stuff, because China's surging so hard and fast with their EV market, I just can't get charges, Alcon charges, or any sort of charges, it's like a 6 to 12 week wait. Are you finding that too, Russ?
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. So sorry, it's getting into a more business kind of shop discussion, but we've got into supply rather than cheaper, but certainly the supply is certainly an issue at the moment for us, and from a like I said, we've got stuff on the water and in transit, and it's many thousands of dollars worth of kit on the way, and obviously that's not really great from a business perspective, but it's what we have to do, obviously.
And
but that means this, like I said, they're strong. The prices are still pretty strong for this stuff because there's people who are wanting it, and obviously I think long story short, to answer the question, we're babbling here, is that over time, yes, but not anytime soon, to be honest with you. I think that's the reality of it.
And I think it's also exacerbated by the low take-up of EVs in Australia compared with Europe.
Correct. And look, this is actually of our shop here, and the guy in the green top in the distance there, that's the customer. And we jokingly had a conversation with him to say, well, look, we need Tesla cells. We need Tesla cells in this vehicle to make it go the distance. And we said to him, tongue in cheek, that yeah, we're actively looking for Tesla cells, but we're literally going to wait for someone to crash their car. And then one day we rang him up and said, well, great news. Well, not for the driver, obviously, but someone crashed their car and we're able to get some cells for you.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. And you're literally waiting for people to have a mishap for you to be able to source these things, or try and source something from overseas, which obviously is not cheap at all.
As you can imagine the dystopian future of people being pulled out of their Teslas at traffic lights for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, when you talk to normal wreckers, or obviously our shop, we're in Clayton South, and we're surrounded by diesel mechanics and all this kind of stuff, and when they hear just how much a Tesla is, as wrecked as it is, and with no other parts available on it. The last Tesla we wrecked, it had there was nothing left of it in terms of anything we could salvage. Every panel had been beaten up, and there's nothing we could really get out of it. It was really just the cells and the rear motor, and the cost of that was just extortionate. But that's what it took, really. And so, no, I don't think any of the car is something that will never really see the road again. It's difficult to comprehend for normal mainstream shops and people in general that these things cost so much money.
That's it. And hello to Gary Scott from Electric Classic Men's in the UK, making composite wheels while he listens, multitasking. And I suppose that brings us back to the question that also came out last week is, what's the best car to convert to EV? And I worked at the Healy factory for a little while, and we used to have people coming in asking what's the best classic car to buy. And I think you've said it before, Russ, the best classic car to convert is the one that you love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's going to cost you a packet, but it comes down to what you love, and you'll make the money for it. So
yeah, and look, the way we convert cars typically, they're going to be used for daily drives.
Yeah.
It's got to be a vehicle that you actually love and have an affinity with. So the blue Range Rover, which is just out of shot in that picture from the previous one, the customer, his dad used to drive one. Dad actually had two, and and that's a vehicle he wanted to drive, to be electric, and also just so happens it helps that it's a pretty iconic shape.
Yeah.
Look, it's your decision in terms of what you want, but it's got to suit your lifestyle. Because, like I said, we typically have these things as daily drives, or we design them to be daily driven, and it's got to be something you have an affinity for, that you love the shape of.
That's it.
Oh yeah.
And you love the way they lurch because the Bose self-leveling unit at the back is worn out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's been good. It's been enlightening, and I think it's given us all a really clear picture of where things are going at the moment. Stuart Angus and your Austin 1800, I'll come back to you later. Don't leave the room.
I like those as well, actually, got to say.
Okay.
And actually, my parents used to have one of those too, so I know exactly what they're about. They're great cars.
Actually, I'll go to it now. Something that a lot of people might not realise when it comes to safety is that even back in the early 60s, manufacturers were building front-wheel drive cars so that the passenger cell actually rides over the engine and transmission in the case of a frontal accident.
Right.
That was discovered serendipitously on the Mini and designed deliberately on the Morris 1100 and Austin 1800. So it's just something to bear in mind when you're perhaps routing the wiring or some of the key components, that in a frontal impact, the body's going to ride over the top of the motor, and maybe it's best not to have your high tension wires over the top.
No, probably not a good idea.
But anyhow, let's move on to a deep dive. And I'm just wondering if Russ is in the room, because there's an exciting ATV project, Russ, I think you've been working on.
Yeah, it's been great, actually. Awesome.
Okay,
so,
great. Moving on.
Yeah, no, well, that's it. I think that's all we need to know, right? So this has been a great project to work on, and incredibly stressful all at the same time, and obviously rewarding too. So this is so the customer is, first of all, is the Department of Defense, and they came to us, I think it was like October-ish last year, and their brief was they wanted to have an ATV, convert an ATV to essentially increase its survivability and its stealth capability as well. So so they brought the vehicle to us. The vehicle was essentially shipped to us direct from the dealership. So it came to us box fresh with, you know, cellophane all over the seats and all this kind of stuff already, and it had literally like minutes on the motor as well. And so they said to us, okay, well, we want it to be quiet. We want it quieter, which wasn't difficult because it was obviously a diesel motor. And then we wanted to have a lower heat signature. And interestingly, they said we wanted to have a high survivability. And what they mean by that is, if one of the wheels is disabled by an IED, then they wanted the vehicle to still be mobile, essentially. And obviously we accepted the challenge, and we delivered the product. I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago, thereabouts, and it was taken up to a Brisbane Brisbane big wig show. A Brisbane demonstration show. So
what's the specs, Russ?
So it's a 60 kilowatt rear motor and twin 10 kilowatt at the front, and then it's got torque vectoring. Some of these photos are in progress. There's not a lot. I can't really talk to you too much about these, but basically, it's let me get this right. So it's 60 kilowatt rear, twin 10 kilowatt at the front, and it has a 24 kilowatt hour battery pack, which gives it around a 200 kilometer range as well. And I can tell you, it's a heap of fun as well. Not only is it obviously resilient to all of those things and we met those requirements, but also it's a heap of fun to drive. In fact, we had to basically turn down the torque on the rear motor because we were in danger of basically ruining the gearbox. So yeah, no, it's been a great project for us. Yeah, so like, and I think obviously the intent is this vehicle is going to be used for special forces, and principally. So the idea is that you'd basically helicopter, you drop it into a war zone, and a couple of special forces guys jump in and they go and do their thing. do a bit of damage, and then get out of there as quickly as they can.
Cause a bit of bother.
Yeah, exactly. So we've also got so the specs are, I think, are pretty impressive. It's interesting that we've had a couple of, I guess, trolls on our website saying, why have you done this when Polaris already do an electric vehicle? Well, the reason is, first of all, obviously independent wheel drive, and that bit of torque vectoring as well. And secondly, it's night and day between the electric the vehicle that Polaris put out, which is leisurely, shall we say, in terms of performance. It's more like a golf cart than anything else. It's pretty slow, and whereas this is literally, it'll do. We've had it to the stage where the speedo only goes up to like 65 or 70 thereabouts. We've had it basically wrapped around the top head, the top needle. So it's been really good, and it's the performance, like I said, we've had to tune it down, like I said, and soften the torque delivery, because you just touch the accelerator and it's like you can't drive it at slow speed. So now we've got this situation whereby it's easy to troll on the motor, if you know what I mean. So you can actually just slowly drive the vehicle from a standstill, and obviously there's no sound whatsoever, and then it's still got this explosive acceleration should you need it as well.
Explosive, yes. Nice,
yes.
So what do they do about fast charging in the field?
So at the moment we've only got 3.3 kilowatts, but there's an opportunity to ramp that up if that's need be. So what are you talking about, being exposed or being away from charge points? Yeah. So look, there's we're looking into essentially a hybrid version of this, where it can essentially take any type of fuel and charge remotely. So it'll be a bit like a submarine in terms of you use the motor to charge the batteries when you're going certain places, and then when you need to go stealth, basically turn it off and then go into stealth mode. But at the same time, the 200 k's is a pretty healthy range for a vehicle of this type. And it's just, we reckon there's some more performance and more refinements to come. It's going up for some further trials in the next couple of weeks. So along with including off-road and real world usage, and then obviously we'll make version 2 of it essentially.
Did it end up heavier, Russ?
Only by about 10%. So the diesel engine, luckily the diesel engine's pretty heavy, so we pulled that out, and then we ended up about, I think, about 50 kilo more than the original vehicle, but you can't tell, and the handling is way better as well now. It's so good. It's like because you've got the battery in the middle, you essentially sit on the battery, and it's really poised, even though it's kind of it's obviously, it looks kind of top heavy because of all the roll bar and all that kind of stuff, but it handles beautifully. It really does, even on those knobbly tires. So I've actually had it drifting a little bit in the wet today, to be honest with you. So you just come around and just give it a bit of juice, and back end comes out, and you can control it and correct it, and off you go. So it's actually really neutral from that perspective. So pretty happy with it. And look, and it's like I say, it's not been without its challenges, but I'm incredibly proud of the team for pulling this off.
Fantastic, looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
And we had a message here from Greg saying it looks like a golden opportunity to develop battery swapping. I seem to recall the first Teslas who had exchangeable battery packs.
Yeah, I heard that too.
And one of their stunts at launch was they had a Tesla next to an Audi A8, and in the time it took the Audi A8 to fill up with petrol, they swapped the battery pack twice from underneath it. It would seem to me to be a modular battery solution like that would seem to be good. Okay, let's move on. Stuart Angus, yes, you can work at EV, but only after I get a job there. So just go back to your Austin 1800 and polish it. A project that I've been really interested in seeing is Tim's charged garage VW Combi. Now the combis, of course, have been ripe for conversions in all sorts of ways, but this one looks really, really sweet. So, Tim, would you be able to tell us something a little bit about it, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peter. So we're going to throw up just a few random photos of the conversion so far, which is still in progress. It's the combi's in the middle of being restored at the same time as the conversion. So we're doing a full restoration as well as a full conversion. So what we're looking at here are some of the practice fittings and mounting of the Tesla small drive unit, which is the rear small drive unit from a 2017, I think, Tesla Model X. That's going to take the place of the VW transaxle position. So no gearbox. It's all being removed from the VW, single speed direct drive. You'll see on the bottom right there, that's how it came out of the Tesla with the full battery pack, motor in its cradle, and the full harness and everything. We kind of just did a test of it with all the Tesla equipment there before we fully stripped it down, and just all we're using from the Tesla is the modules and the motor itself, and we're removing the inverter and replacing it with an aftermarket board. And on the bottom left is some of the battery box fabrications which have been designed and dry fitted, but removed now while the shell gets painted and restored. So what else have we got on the next slide? Look, this is just some of the before pictures. I started with a combi that was an unfinished project, but was nice and tidy underneath. So the undercarriage was all perfectly done, but nothing above the undercarriage had been restored yet, apart from all the rust and everything was replaced with all new panels. So it was a really good starting point for a conversion, because there was no motor and everything had been stripped out, but a lot of hard work had been done. Next slide, please. Let's see. So we're starting to get some nice bright colours on it now, thanks to Greg at Van Zelst Restorations. And we've got a custom-made end motor mount on the top left by Traction EV, which uses the stock VW gearbox mounting positions, and the Tesla motor unit is hung from using its mounting points. And yeah, the bottom right there is what was the engine bay with the fuel tank and gearbox and all the ice bits removed, giving it a nice lick of electric blue paint, the electron bay as it's now known. And after we put that in, that Tesla small drive unit in, we'll be filling that up with batteries. So all the battery modules are going to fit underneath the belly of the combi and in the rear engine or electron bay at the back. There's no battery modules going to be fitted inside the passenger cabin at all. I just wanted to keep everything hidden away as best as possible and as low as possible, and didn't want to impede the interior design at all. So it'll look stock basically on the inside and can have any type of interior fit out that I like. Yeah, so all new paint here. So it's a clean canvas. Yeah, some of the design goals that I had for the project is just put as big a battery pack as possible. So it's a full pack from a Tesla 75 kilowatt hour pack, matched to the small drive unit, hoping for that to give around 300 to 350k range. Let's see. That's just a guess at the moment, but we'll see. I just wanted to A little different to my Cortina, which uses a gearbox and as a torque multiplier. This will just be using a single speed. So let's see how that compares. It's got enough power to drive this type of vehicle, but we'll have to tune it in so that it's a nice vehicle to drive. But simple and straightforward. So anyone will be able to hop in. Combis or other old vehicles can be a bit intimidating for people that don't necessarily know how to drive old classic cars, but this should be straightforward. Point and shoot, put it in gear, and away you go. No clutch, no gear changes. It should be nice and simple for anyone to use.
Mate, you've got your work cut out there, fella. You really do.
Yep.
Good answer.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your timeline, Tim? Sorry, we should have. First of all, I'm impressed with the quality of work, but geez, you got your work cut out, fella. That's a
big project. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I don't see any loom there either.
Yeah, we're getting
or interior.
Yeah.
And yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good on you, Tim. Good luck.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's first.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's good.
Yeah, look, everything, it's a full restoration, so that part of it is a big job. So everything old is going to be restored back to new or better, or just bought new. So yeah, we'll have a custom made whole new harness made up. All new, every inch of glass is brand new. It's going to be everything new or better than new, or restored back to like new, but still with that classic appearance and classic feel.
Are you doing anything to the suspension, Tim? Because that was one we had custom suspension and drop suspension and Porsche disc brakes all round, and we didn't have the weight of yours. We only had a 18 kilowatt pack, but it was scary. It was doing, I think I put on Instagram, 8.60 to 100s, and a combi is pretty scary when you get to a corner, no matter how good you play with them. Are you going to do anything in that regard, Tim?
Yeah, look, the previous owner has already done all the brakes already. I mean, it's just the stock front discs and rear drums at the moment, and we'll be checking everything over. So steering, brakes, suspension will all be visited during the restoration and conversion, just to check that everything's up to speed. I'm not planning on putting a narrowed beam or chop spindles yet, because we'll see how it all sits before we get the stance right. So these are all things that we'll work on as we go through.
And so I think what the standard 16 or 1800 had about 70 horsepower. So how many is the small drive unit going to put out?
Oh, it has a capability of, I think it's 220 kilowatt or 300 horsepower up to. But we'll see how we control that, keep it in check.
But I suppose adding some weight to the midships will help keep that in check.
Yeah,
I guess. And I suppose
we'll also, speaking of that, I'm putting a full air conditioning system in that's running off the high voltage, which will have twin, front air conditioning and rear air conditioning as well. A few other mod cons like that as well.
That's huge. What's the timeline for completion?
Oh, you can't ask those sorts of questions, because I don't know. Yeah, it's just it's currently being worked on. We're trying for as soon as possible, but these things take time, so I've given up putting a timeline to it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yes.
But yeah, 350 horsepower thereabouts is basically E46 M3 territory. So yeah, that's going to be pretty key. Yeah.
going to be exciting.
Yeah, exciting. Yeah, exciting. That's the word I was thinking of. Yeah, absolutely, it's going to be exciting.
But I suppose that given the Volkswagens have got a pretty hot customer scene, especially in the US, where they put small block Chevys and Porsche turbos into them. In this case, there is a fairly deep well of experience and parts available.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
To help with that. And if we just sort of segue into that a bit, if you are improving the performance of your classic car by a lot, it's worth looking at the hot rod and the custom scene to see what they're doing. And there's a lot of good stuff in Australia. For example, RRS Components do a complete backbone chassis that will bolt underneath a 60s Mustang or Falcon, giving you a proper 5-link rear end and stiffening the body up, because those things were basically an XM Falcon in a party dress. And so it helps to look at that custom car and hot rod scene, because there are lots of bolting stuff that can help you with your classic car.
Excellent.
So I'm looking forward to it. And so if we can probably open up now to Q&A. And Stuart had a question along the lines of how long is a piece of string? And the correct answer is half as long as twice its length. How much would it cost to get something like the Combi engineered, please?
I can answer that, Pete, because we did a Combi Tesla conversion and put it on the road about 2 months ago. Now it's off the road because someone bought our drive and batteries. But it was about $1,800 in New South Wales. But we also changed our seating capacity. And I'm not too sure what Queensland would be like. Tim, you've done your Cortina, you did some other changes too. What was your price?
Yeah, look, for the electric conversion, it is around that. But yeah, in Queensland, every mod code, they kind of charge per mod code. But yeah, it was under a couple of grand with a few other mod codes for seating and other modifications that were done at the same time. So I think the engineering cost isn't much if you have, in relatively speaking, it's not that bad if you have the engineer involved as you go along. If you get to the end of the project and then try and get it engineered and it's not what they want, then that's when the engineering costs a lot. So
yeah, I guess that for me, when I see a question, how much the engineering cost, the engineer is, it's his call out rate plus hourly charge or whatever it's going to be, right? So $1,000, $2,000, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, engineering means, well, okay, what have we got to? We put the motor in. What have we got to do to satisfy that engineer? What's that cost? What's the cost of that? And I guess in your case, if you've got 220 kilowatts or 350 horsepower or whatever through in a vehicle that only ever left the factory with 70, then what have you got to do to make that engineer happy? So
yeah, I think
that's what I'd be.
Yeah,
that's my question, I guess, to you. Is what
well,
have you got to,
one of the interesting things is that, well, in Queensland or anyway, that you get rated on what the continuous power rating of the motor is, not the peak rating.
Yeah, that's the same as New South Wales. So when I did our Combi, even though it was 300 horsepower, the continuous rating in the Tesla small drive is only 35 kVA.
Exactly. Yeah.
And actually for the Hyper 9 is 38. So the Hyper 9 is actually more powerful with continuous rating than the Tesla small drive. Hard to believe, but there you go.
Yeah, just keep that quiet. We don't want people to close that. I won't call it a loophole.
Everyone listening, just keep that to yourselves. You never heard that, right?
Yeah. That's it.
Ice motors. I mean, people don't drive around an ice motor at 300 horsepower continuously because it doesn't do it continuously. So I don't think they'll change that. And even in the ADRs, it's the same methodology.
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly like an ICE engine comparison.
Yeah. And I suppose the key is talk to your engineer before you start. Learn AS.
Yeah, absolutely.
what is it, ASB 14, go through that and learn it off by heart. And an engineer will charge you between $250 and $1,000 for an initial consultation, but that will save you $10,000 at the end if you don't.
Yeah, and look,
right.
the other thing that there's engineers we know who won't touch a vehicle that has already been modified.
Yep.
So you got to start with something that's already stock, that hasn't been touched,
Yep.
as the first thing. So I don't even think about pulling the engine out or buying motors and all that kind of stuff. Just get the engineer first and say, I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about doing that, I'm going to put these motors in here and this battery box over here. And he'll just go, whoa, sweet child of mine. just stop what you're doing, and this is what you need to do. And here's BSB 14.
Yeah.
Go and read it, and then we'll have another chat, kind of thing. So that's the biggest. Yeah, that's, I guess, top tip number one from everyone here. I guess
because the consequences of getting it wrong many orders of magnitude greater than with an ICE.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, another question from Jamie. In the Combi, what AC compressor are you planning to use, please?
Oh yeah, I was going to use a Tesla one from one of our wrecks, but I decided to buy a brand new one off the shelf from China, high voltage. I'm running it can operate up to 350 volts. So we just ordered one direct from China. I can't remember the brand or details, but if you need to know, send us an email or something. I can find out.
Okay. And from Jamie, question about the military ATV conversion. What voltage is it? 48, 72, other?
Actually 130 volts. And then the other thing we've got as well on that, we've got actually dual battery packs. So I should have mentioned this earlier. So it's not just in terms of redundancy, we've got dual battery packs and then obviously tri-motors as well. So if something happens to one of the motors, then one of the battery packs, for whatever it is, it gets incapacitated, then it can still drive on the other motor, on the other battery pack. But yeah, 130 volts is what we charge to, and nominal is about 119, I think it is. So it's pretty good.
Well, that's fantastic. I think that's been really good. Are there any other questions from the great unwashed?
I think there's something that's open for, it says that Greg has asked a few questions. I don't know if you answered those.
Okay.
If you scroll up.
Actually, it's in the Q&A box. So Greg from Darwin has a question around the Orion and DC charging, which I've used Orion and I used DC charging, currently working in my Cortina, and we'll be doing the same with the Combi. But I won't be using CCS2, probably because of the reasons you touch on in the question. Question is that Orion have stalled their development towards integration of CCS2 compatibility because, in inverted commas, others are doing it. Yes, others are doing it. Zero EV, I think,
we're the agents for them, Tim.
Have a package for that. But Orion do provide DC charging capability with the Chartamo protocol out of the box, and that's what we use. That's why I'm sticking with using Chartamo protocol for the time being. Can you recommend some way to finish off the job and enable DC charging? Well, my recommendation would be to use the Chartamo protocol, but Conrad, what do you think about CCS2?
I've honestly think in 2 years it'll be open sourced, both because there'll be such a demand. The CCS2 that we've had one going down here in New South, it works really well. We've had up to 50 kilowatts full out of the NRMA charger. But it's just that price. You're paying for someone to come up with that protocol and canvas and sniff the talking. And I think Damien's doing open source canvas one, isn't he, Russ? Is he one?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it'll be anyone. As Tim said, the Chartamo is good for the DIYers because it can charge down to 120 volts. The CCS will only do above 200 volts, so It sort of limits the hyper-9 conversion stuff.
I have some sympathy with Zero EV and Orion, all those kind of guys, because you've got to remember from a business point of view that they've got to spend a heap of time in developing this. And there's got to be market for them to do it. There's got to be, at some point, these guys have got to be earning money. They've got to be paying people. And
it took a year to get that.
Yeah. So they've got to elect to do that and spend money and invest. There's got to be, the same with Evolution and any other business as well. We've got to elect. It's same with slightly off topic. We could do, battery swaps for IMEVs and Leafs and all this kind of stuff, but we elect not to do that because it's, to be frank, the development isn't worth our while and the effort isn't worth our while. We'd rather do something else. And I think with the likes of Orion, they've got to deliberately elect to spend time developing this stuff as a business decision, such that they're going to make money out of it, because they're obviously not charities. So I guess as time passes, then they'll maybe get into it, or the players will come in, but they've got to spend a lot of time making it work. And then, to be frank, they've got to support people as well, and that takes a lot of effort. You've got to pay someone, obviously, in Australia, a fair amount of money to make that happen, and I don't think that. I think that's underdone sometimes. So, I totally get why they've stalled that at the moment, I guess. Really, long story short.
That's it. Someone's got to pay the tiller man.
Someone's got to pay. Everyone's got a mortgage. Everyone's got rent and stuff to pay, and it has to be funded somehow. It's not free, although Damien does seem to do it for free to a certain extent, but he's obviously a hero in that regard. So yeah, look, it's
that's his superpower.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Greg from Darwin. Ooh, another one. It sounds like something out of the Spice Girls, Greg. Is there a standard checklist for various stages in a conversion for testing and commissioning, and is anything like that available publicly?
Not yet, but the EV Alliance is about to release a training course for this kind of stuff. So everything from high level design, considerations for charging motors, configuration, and all of that kind of stuff. I can tell you it's going to be pretty comprehensive, but at the same time, it's going to be generic, because we can't obviously specialize on one type of subsystem against another. But it's going to be pretty comprehensive to allow individuals to do their thing and configure the BMSs properly and get the integration right and all that kind of stuff. At least have those as considerations. So yeah, that's coming. In addition, obviously, we've got the high voltage safety course, which has already been released, which I highly recommend. I highly recommend anyone who's considering doing this as to subscribe. I think we've got it on special at the moment. I think it's $295. Sorry, this has turned into a sell. I do apologise for that. But it's essentially it's $295. But there's also a discount code available at evalliance.net.au.
Fantastic.
But like as we said earlier, the top tip is to get an engineer involved, but then also understand how you can safely work on these vehicles. I'm constantly dismayed at the unsolicited advice on various groups at the moment, where people are just saying, "Oh yeah, just disconnect this, just do that, just get a battery off, just get a car off pickles and just pull it apart." It's really easy, and there's people giving advice that have never done this before in their lives.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's and we've all got, as conversion shops, we've all got experiences of hearing about these things and when things go wrong. And to be frank, 50 volts can can kill you basically, and some of these vehicles operate at 360 plus.
Yeah, that's it.
So, and there's basically no coming back from some of these if you make a mistake. So
it's you get the gift of eternal youth, I think is how they describe it.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So look, that would be number 2 recommendation after getting an engineer involved, I would say, with all this.
Yeah. So just to add to that, guys, so that first course of the DIY conversion will have a really handy form that at the back of the course at the end that will help you plan and sort of take to your engineer what you've planned, your weight, your capacity, some basic things that we do as conversion shop businesses to the engineer that you'll be able to do yourself. So there'll be some really good info in these courses.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I really urge people to do it.
Okay, so we've only got a few minutes left. Couple of questions about people approving electronics. Your registration bodies will have a list of approved engineers. So I know in Victoria, VicRoads have got their VAS engineers. Your engineer will tell you who he will trust to do any electrical approvals. So go through your engineer, please. And so there is that list of recommended engineers.
Just on that, some VAS engineers actually reach out to us for conversions as well, for advice and consult as well. So that happens as well, actually.
Okay, yeah. So Stuart, it's VSB 14. If you look it up, it's a federal document. Hopefully we might be able to get a link to that put up. Stuart also asked, is there an alternative to the Tesla front drive unit? Maybe you could look at the Volvo T8 front axle, which is a GKN unit, single speed, but then we all know that Volvos don't crash. So that's that. There's lots of good questions about subsidies and all that sort of stuff, but it's something that we might have to get to next week. If you do have any questions outstanding from tonight, then please email them through to the team and we might be able to get to them next week as part of unfinished business. So, in closing, thanks to the audience for coming along on this cold winter's night. You'll see on the slide on your screen now the people who are members of EV Alliance, and I would urge you to build relationships with them, and following that, spend some money with them. And my third recommendation is spend some money with them. So thanks also to the team. Thanks Conrad, thanks Russ, thanks Tim, thanks Emma for the invitation. It's been a really fantastic session, and so I think we can probably wind it up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Very much appreciate it. That was awesome.
And thank you, Peter. Good night, Australia.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks all for joining.